Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Mara. I'm a psychic, intuitive, tarot, and oracle reader. And today I am welcoming you to the first class in my tarot course. I'm so grateful and so excited to be able to share all of the knowledge and the experiences that I've had within my journey with tarot and my relationship with the cards. And I hope that you find this course insightful, uplifting, and encouraging for you to develop your own bond with the cards. So, with all of that being said, grab your notebook if you're taking notes, grab a snack, grab a drink, whatever you'd like, snuggle in, and let's get started with my first class on tarot. So, in today's class, we are going to be exploring things that will really set the stage for you to feel like a confident, knowledgeable tarot reader. Having a very clear understanding of what the cards are and where they come from is going to help you feel confident in your practice, whether you're reading for yourself or reading for the public. We're going to explore questions like what is tarot? How can it be used? We're going to look at the history of tarot and playing cards in general. And then we will touch on some tarot techniques like shuffling your deck, storing your cards, some books that I recommend, as well as some decks that I recommend. So, what is tarot and how can it be used? Tarot is a deck of cards that have been developed over centuries into what we know and love today, typically as a divination tool, but it's not just that. It is a playing card game, specifically a trick taking game, and it's still widely played in Europe, mostly Italy and France. It is known as tarocchi. Today, tarot represents the spectrum of the human condition. It is not witchcraft or inherently occult. It is philosophy. Tarot doesn't tell us anything that we can't discover and find out on our own. Tarot shines a light on and explores the complexities of being a human. It shows us our successes, our failures, the good times and the bad times, and gives us some insights into how to navigate those chapters in our lives. Tarot does not judge us or criticize us. It merely sets the stage for smoother transitions, better understanding of ourselves, and higher achievements. At its core, tarot is a tool. You have free will, and you are meant to exercise that free will in a response to what tarot is providing for you. Tarot does not predict the future, it predicts what you're aligned with. So it can't set things in stone. If you receive a negative prediction or hear something that you don't want, your free will needs to be exercised to make the necessary decisions and changes that will lead you into something better feeling for yourself. It's important to remember that no spiritual tool can nullify your free will. Tarot is a friend and a very reliable companion. It is also a mirror. And as you develop your relationship with the cards, you are also developing a relationship with your own inner guidance system. So now that you know a little bit more about tarot, what it is, and how it can be used, let's dive into the history of playing cards and tarot. Playing cards originated in China. The exact date is very highly debated, but it is typically agreed upon that they were in existence by the 10th century. There is historical evidence that does suggest that they were being developed or even already in existence by the 9th or even the 7th century. So again, when playing cards were invented is very debated, but it is agreed upon that they did come from the East. Trade eventually brought cards to the Islamic societies by the 11th century. Under the Mamluk Empire, the cards Maluk wa Nouveaou were created. These cards were more commonly known as the Mamluk cards or the Topkapi deck. And it was segmented into 4 suits. You had the myriads, which were drawn as cups and goblets, polo sticks, coins, and scimitars, which is a type of sword for those that don't know. And these were numbered ace through 10. By the 1370s, Central Asian merchants brought these cards to Europe, most likely through Venice, with it being such a large port city, but there's no real evidence to really narrow down where exactly they entered Europe through. As card games were being introduced to Europe, they eventually gained popularity and then started getting banned. Religious figures would write sermons to really warn people of the trickery and the bad behavior associated with playing card games. So while the working class was being discouraged and even getting in trouble for playing these card games, the wealthy were commissioning artists to make one of a kind tarot decks for them and their families. These decks were created to really reflect the special interests and desires of these individuals and families, and even in some cases had family members painted into the decks. In the early part of the 15th century, the tarot deck that we know and love today was being developed. However, given the complexities of the trump cards, it is very likely that they were being developed way before the 15th century. There are three Visconti Sforza decks that you will likely come across in your time learning about tarot and its history. These all were created within Bonifacio Bimbo's workshop. And if you aren't aware, a workshop, especially back then, meant that somebody, an artist, had trained a whole class of people to do copycat work. So these decks were all created by several people that were all trained by Bonifacio Bimbo. The first deck is the Visconti Tarot. This was made for Filippo Maria Visconti. He was the last duke under the Visconti name. There are 69 remaining cards from this deck. The second deck is the Visconti Sforza deck. This deck was made most likely for Francesco Sforza, who was the man that married Visconti's only daughter. And there are 74 remaining cards in that deck. The third deck is the Brambilla deck, and it is named after a former owner, but it was originally created for Visconti before he died, and there are 48 surviving cards in that deck. Another important deck to talk about is the Solabusca deck. It was created in Ferrara in the 1470s to 1480s, and it is the only surviving complete 78 card deck. While the Solabusca is known as the oldest complete tarot deck, the Visconti Sforza is known as the oldest tarot deck because it is so similar to the tarot that we know and love today. Other decks had very different trump cards because they were being made to really match the desires and interests of individual families. The Visconti Sforza trumps descends as follows: the world, angels, which would be judgment, the sun, the moon, the stars, temperance, death, the traitor, which would be the devil, the old man, which would be the hermit, wheel of fortune, fortitude, which would be strength, chariot, justice, love, which would be the lovers, pope, which would be the hierophant, emperor, popess, which would be the high priestess, the empress, mountebank, which would be the magician, and the fool. The next deck that I want to talk about is the Tarot di Marseille. This deck was initially designed in Italy, but then it was created in France, so it is known as a French deck. This deck was based off of woodblock prints, and it is still used as one of the more popular decks for playing the game Tarocchi. So now moving forward into the 18th century, we are going to look at a man named Antoine Court de Jabulon. This man was a Reformed church pastor and a scholar. Between 1773 and 1784, Antoine wrote a book project, a multi-volume book project that was titled The Primeval World, Analyzed and Compared to the Modern World. He did die before he finished his writings, but he published a lot. And in the 8th volume of his book series, he wrote about tarot cards. In this essay specifically, he linked the cards to the Book of Thoth. He suggested that Thoth himself had written sacred knowledge and disguised that knowledge into the cards for travelers to bring forward to the world. This is a pretty controversial topic within the tarot scholar community, And I am not here to tell you which side of the coin you want to stay on or what you want to believe. You can definitely do your own research in regard to that. But historically, the facts of it is that there were no facts. There was nothing to back his theory up. And the things that he were claiming to be true don't exist. And they were based off of false facts. So you get to choose what you want to believe, but in regards to that being factually true, it is not. But during the time of this theory being introduced, there was a big spiritual wave in societies. You had a big divide from spiritual communities to scientific communities because there were big scientific advancements being made that were challenging long held beliefs within religion and spirituality. So it was really exciting for people to dive into new theories and experience new ideas. Antoine was also the first person to link the tarot cards to the 22 Hebrew letters in the alphabet. So now let's talk about a man named Jean-Baptiste Eliot, who went by Italia, which is Eliot spelled backwards. This man was the first person to be known for his tarot readings and the first person that we know of to give a paid reading. Italia wrote a book about tarot being a playing card game and how you could play it. Later, after reading Antoine's work, he did revise this book and he re-released it as tarot being a divination tool. He doubled down on the theory that tarot came from ancient Egypt and that it was a divination tool. In this book, a lot of today's standards for giving readings were birthed. So, for example, if a card were to land reversed, that it adjusted the meaning of the card. He is also responsible for giving meanings to the pip cards, not just the trump cards. Italia, alongside his son, opened a new school of magic and really brought the discussion of tarot and the interpretation of the cards to the public. He is pretty responsible for bringing people together to really discuss what tarot means and what the cards individually meant for people. About 30 years after Antoine's analysis was published, a Frenchman named Alphonse Louis Castal was born. Alphonse was a religious man and was even a week away from being ordained as a minister when he decided to abandon that lifestyle and move into more Western occultism. At about 40 years old, he embraced that life entirely and changed his name to Eliphas Levi. Levi took Antoine's connection of the Hebrew alphabet to the trump cards and further refined it, moving the Fool to land between judgment and the world. He also assigned the trump cards to the pathways on the Tree of Life. Through his writing, Levi is responsible for really redesigning the tarot cards into a more Egyptian outlook. For example, he added Sphinx into the chariot. But we will get more into those changes when we do deep dives into the tarot cards themselves. Levi did acknowledge tarot as a divination tool, but he was not very fond of that route. He was more keen to it being based off of psychology. He had many students and would teach them that it was a way to guide and bring insights to yourself and the world around you. A Swiss occultist named Joseph Paul Oswald Wirth wrote a book based off of Levi's teachings called The Tarot of the Magicians. Under the guidance of a man named Stanislas de Gueda, he also created a tarot deck to go along with this book. In this deck, there were no pip cards, only 22 trump cards, and it was called the Arcana of the Kabbalistic Tarot. This is the first deck that you can really find clear occult symbolism in. Moving forward, we reach a man named Gerard Incosse, which went by Papus. Papus was a physician and an occultist who founded the modern Martinist order of the Christian mysticism. That is a mouthful. In addition to medicine, he studied the Kabbalah, alchemy, and magic. Pappas agreed a lot with what Lévy put forth in his writings, and he worked to further the ideas that Lévy put forward. He really believed in a universal tool that could be used to unify a lot of cultures into one thing. Pappas developed a system that gave each trump card three meanings: a physical meaning, a magical meaning, and a divine meaning. He also expanded the way in which tarot could be used. He introduced a lot of tarot spreads in his writings, in his books that he released, and a lot of those spreads are very common and still used today. Pappas was also on the bandwagon that agreed that tarot did come from ancient Egypt, and he was very in alignment with those beliefs. So, moving forward, we are going to now look at one of the last major influences that tarot really experienced in its development. And I want to preface this by saying that I am purposefully leaving out some information because there is literally so many subcategories and complexities that go into this topic that it would be its own class on its own. So, with that being said, we come to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Founded in the late 1800s, it was birthed from Rosicrucianism and originally called the Kabbalistic Order of the Rose Cross. The Golden Dawn bases their practices and beliefs off of 5 dozen documents called the cipher manuscripts. These documents were passed down through scholars within Freemasonry and eventually landed in the hands of a man named William Wynne Westcott. William went on to decipher these manuscripts and found that they contained information about Christian Gnosticism, the Kabbalah, and Egyptian magic, and much more information. They also contained a structured outline of a series of initiation rituals based off of spiritual elements of earth, air, fire, and water. Now, the cipher manuscripts is a controversial topic. There are a lot of scholars who do not believe that William's story is or could have been accurate. But again, I encourage you to do your own research and to really decide what you choose to believe in your relationship and development with tarot. The practice of an ideology of tarot cards were significantly impacted within the Golden Dawn. Further links to the Judaic tree of life were made, and this really impacted the way that tarot was being used. So, not only did people believe that tarot could help you predict the future, but they also started to believe that it could help you reach into the future and manipulate it. So, moving forward, let's talk about Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers. And the MacGregor part was actually added by himself because he believed he had ancestors in the Scottish Highlands. This man worked very closely with William Wynne Westcott to decipher the cipher manuscripts and everything that really entailed. Mathers spoke several languages, so he was able to really translate a lot of occult texts into English for those within the Golden Dawn. He was one of the biggest driving factors when it comes to tarot's interpretations and the card meanings changing in a reflection to all of the symbolism that was being introduced into the cards. He linked the suit cards to things like mother, father, masculine, feminine, as well as assigning them the earth, air, fire, and water elements. Being such a notable scholar at the time, he did end up teaching Aleister Crowley, who I'm sure you've heard of before if you've dipped your toes into tarot. We will talk about him in a moment, but he really led Aleister into what he knew about tarot at the time and the Golden Dawn. But first, let's talk about Arthur Edward Waite. He was 34 when he first joined the Golden Dawn, but he shortly left after, and about 4 or 5 years later, he rejoined and completely devoted himself to the beliefs of the Golden Dawn. Arthur was a British poet, and if you have ever glanced at tarot, then you have surely heard his last name, Waite, being one of the names in the Rider-Waite Smith deck. Like most authors for tarot, he did commission an artist named Pamela Colman Smith. She is a very eclectic lady. She was very, very cool. A Catholic woman, but more of a bohemian Catholic because she was raised in the arts. She was raised in storytelling and became this very eclectic lady. Pamela, otherwise known as Pixie, and Arthur met within the Golden Dawn, and together they created the Rider Waite Smith deck, believing it to be a spiritual history of man. So now let's talk about Edward Alexander Crowley, or more commonly known as Aleister Crowley. Aleister was born into a very, very wealthy Christian fundamentalist family, and he rejected that lifestyle. He did go to college as a poet and he traveled the world, but once he ran out of his parents' trust fund, then he really relied on the community that he found within the Golden Dawn. He became a member in 1898 and trained under Mathers to learn ceremonial magic. Aleister believed that the Golden Dawn teachings should be shared with the world and publicized. So in 1909, he wrote and published a book called 777 and Other Kabbalistic Writings. In this book, he shared the connection of tarot to the Hebrew alphabet, and he continued to publicize a lot of the secrets and rituals and rites within the Golden Dawn. Aleister Crowley is a very controversial person, and we're not going to dive into the controversies of his life, but as it relates to tarot and its development, he is very responsible for a lot of tarot's development. In 1944, Aleister wrote and published a book titled The Book of Thoth, a short essay on the tarot of Egyptians. In his writings, he continued the theory that Antoine put forth that tarot did come from ancient Egypt. Then in 1969, alongside the artist Frida Harris, he created his own tarot called the Thoth Tarot. This deck and the writings that he put forward in his lifetime kind of gave permission to a lot of artists to explore their own interpretations when it comes to culturally different ideas within the tarot and its history. He is not solely responsible for being the person to, pave the way for artists to explore this, but he did play a significant part in the development of tarot being something more than just what the Rider Waite Smith deck brought forward. So there you have it. In terms of major milestones within tarot's history and the development of these cards, that's basically the whole story. Remember that tarot is always evolving. There will always be new things that we can discover and dive into to expand our knowledge and understanding of tarot and the cards and even the history of it. Hopefully you learned something new here within the history of tarot. Now let's jump into some tarot techniques. First, I want to mention that there is no such thing as the tarot police. However, a lot of people like to claim themselves as the tarot police. They like to tell people that they're doing things wrong, that they don't know what the meaning of that is, or that they have to do something a very certain way, and that's just not the case. Tarot is not a closed practice. It is open for interpretation, and you are allowed to do with it what you feel comfortable doing. So with that being said, let's talk about cleansing our decks. Cleansing is a personal preference. Not everybody is going to cleanse their cards. Some people are more strict about it than others, and that is okay. It's really about feeling out what is right for you and what is right for your individual decks. You may find that one deck prefers to be cleansed with one method and the other doesn't like that method. So just feel it out, use your intuition to decide what's right for you and your decks. So if cleansing your cards is something that you do want to do, then let's dive into how you can do that. The first method for cleansing your cards would be by smoke. And I want to say that you should avoid using white sage, Palo Santo, or sweetgrass, because these are parts of closed practices. These are herbs that belong to specific cultures. And if you're not part of those demographics, then these herbs will not serve you in that way. And it would be culturally appropriative of you to use those things. With that being said, you can use cedar, lavender, lemon balm, a lot of different incenses, whatever kind of smoke that you connect with on a cleansing level, something that makes you feel refreshed, would be good to use on your cards. And you would just wrap the smoke around your cards several times, or you can go over your cards if you're not in the space to lift things up. It's totally up to you, and you get to decide how you want to cleanse. The second method I would suggest is physically interacting with your cards. So you could tap or knock on your cards, you could tap on your cards, you could blow onto your cards, you can kiss your deck, you can do whatever you want with your cards. You can also shuffle with the intention of clearing the energy. So as you're shuffling downwards, imagine the energy falling out of the cards. Another method would be to use crystals or salt to cleanse your deck. You can use a crystal wand to wrap around, or you can use something to swipe across the deck. You can also leave your deck dormant and have a crystal sitting on top to just have it cleared for when you're ready to use it. You can also use the moon and the sun to cleanse your card. So, leaving your cards out in the sunlight to recharge and refresh, or leaving them out in the moonlight to do the same. However, with the moon, you may want to be a little bit mindful about what cycle and phase it's in. The waning moon would be more beneficial than, say, the waxing. Other techniques include flame work, so holding your cards gently over a flame or brushing your cards over a flame. You can also meditate with your cards, or you can speak to your cards and build a verbal relationship with them where you ask them, I cleanse all energy that is not mine. I cleanse all energy that is not divine. Like, do little things like that to really create a more sacred or personal relationship with your cards. But it's whatever works best for you. And again, you will find that some decks like to be cleansed one way and another one doesn't really like that same method. So now let's go ahead and dive into shuffling the cards. So the first method is to just gently let the cards fall into your hands. You're grabbing from the back of the deck and placing the cards into the front. Another method would be to split the deck, and then you're going to take it like this. This is practiced. It's something that's going to take a lot of practice, but you let the cards fall in and kind of make an accordion, bring them up, and let them fall back into place. And that gives a more thorough shuffle. So again, you split the deck, bring it forward, bring them together, and allow them to fall back into place. Another method is similar to the first, but you're going to be using your thumb and your right, this is my right hand, to pull upwards as you're shuffling down. Now, this is to make a card pop out on its own. So if you prefer that cards come on their own and that you're not pulling from the deck, then this would be a method that works for you. So again, you're going to go like this, and using your thumb to push down on the cards to pull into this hand. And using this hand, you will slightly tilt upwards as you're pulling on your thumb. And so eventually, you'll get a card or a few that pop out. And again, you may find that some decks you like to shuffle in one way and another deck you don't like that same method. So just stay open. Don't box yourself into any specific shuffling technique. Now, when it comes to pulling the cards, say you go ahead and shuffle and you want to pull your own card and not have the tarot pop out at you, then you would lay your deck down. You can split it. Some people like to split it 3 times. Some people like to split it twice. It's really up to you and the personal spread that you're doing. There are some specific practices when it comes to how to pull tarot. So you get to decide which ones resonate the most for you. But you can, for instance, split the deck and pull a card and go ahead and read what has come forward for you. Now, when it comes to the bottom of the deck, for me personally, when I read tarot, the bottom of the deck symbolizes the overarching energy of the situation or the question that is being asked. That is not how all readers read, and you can look into different bottom of the deck interpretations to decide what method will work best for you. If you're a little bit more chaotic, you can go ahead and spread your cards out like this and just pull a card and see what comes forward for you. Similarly, you can do something a little bit less chaotic, but along the same lines, and spread your cards out gently and pull from wherever you are feeling drawn to in the line. When it comes to keeping your tarot decks in a stored space, it is important to listen to what works best for you, but also protect your cards from damage. So leaving them out and about may not be the best thing, but if that's what works for you, then that's what works for you, and you should honor that. Some people like to keep their tarot in the box that they came in, and that is totally fine and dandy. I keep a lot of my decks in their boxes. You can also transfer them to a mesh bag to kind of make it so you can easily see what deck it is, or you can use a velvet opaque bag that doesn't allow you to see the deck, but you'll start to learn, especially if you keep them in very unique bags, which deck is which. Now let's go ahead and talk about the books I would recommend for people getting into tarot, or even if you just haven't read these yet, I definitely recommend them. The first one would be The Pictorial Key to the Tarot. This is written by Arthur Edward Waite, and it is very insightful in terms of all the things that the Rider Waite Smith deck really symbolizes. It can't get more accurate than this because it is written by Arthur Edward Waite. The next one I would recommend is Holistic Tarot by Benabel Wen. This is a very, very, very detailed deep dive into tarot, what it is, some of its history, how to do spreads, deep dive into each card and the interpretation of the cards, the suits, and so much more. This is a very thorough and hefty book, but it is worth the purchase if you are looking to expand your tarot knowledge. The other one I would suggest is The Secrets to the Waite Smith Tarot. This is written by several people, Marcus Katz and Tolly Goodwin. And it really dives into the Waite Smith Tarot in a very detailed breakdown. It also has a lot of cool information about Pamela Coleman Smith and her history as an artist. And lastly, I would suggest this book here called The Tarot Life Planner. This is by Lady Lorelei. And this book is really interesting in the way of it presenting each card as different levels of understanding. So it'll give you a upside meaning, a downside meaning, what it is when it comes to you as a life object or obstacle. I mean, when it comes to you as more of a psychological lesson. It has a lot of different interpretations. The main thing to remember when you are reading tarot books is that not everybody is correct, and you get to decide what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Again, there's no tarot police. If somebody comes to you and is like, well, you don't know what that card means because you interpreted it this way, just wish them well and let them be on their way, because it's really not that serious. You get to choose what you want to believe when it comes to these cards. Yes, there is a historical meaning, there is a developed understanding of the card, but if you don't want to align with that, then you need to listen to your intuition to give the readings that will be the most beneficial for you and your clients. So, as far as decks that I would recommend, if you are first starting out with tarot, I highly, highly recommend the Rider Waite Smith deck over all decks. But it is important for you to find a deck that really resonates with you. This is not the deck that I started out with. I started with The Wild Unknown by Kim Kranz. This deck is a beautiful option to start out with. But if you're wanting to start with that more traditional mindset, then the Rider Waite Smith deck would be the one for you. Some little deviants of the Rider Waite Smith would be the Golden Art Nouveaou. This deck is really beautiful. It has a lot of similar artwork, but it has a gold foil. And then you have Ethereal Visions. This one is specifically the Luna edition, so this has some foil as well, but the artistry in this provides enough differences to the Rider Waite Smith deck that it is a significant difference to the interpretations. Like there are little subtleties in the artwork that make things a little bit different. There's also 2 extra cards in the Ethereal Vision deck that provide a little bit more of an expansive experience when it comes to giving readings or doing your own readings. So then we've got the Starlight Tarot deck from it's the Wyspell Tarot, but it's the Starlight Gold Edition. It's got really pretty gold leaf sides, and it does have, again, a lot of that similar imagery to the Rider Waite, but enough differences to provide a more expansive or different interpretation when it comes to most of the cards. If you are leaning into just expanding your tarot collection, I do recommend the Wild Unknown. This is such a beautiful deck. I'll take it out real quick. It is a little bit more of a darker vibe, but it is very beautiful and it is very to the point. It's very simplistic, and I really enjoy that about her decks in general. She has a lot of really beautiful decks. I think this is her only tarot deck, but she does have a lot of oracle and other decks. The next one I would suggest is the Tarot of Mystical Moments. This also has an accompanying oracle deck, which I've had for a long time, but just recently got this deck. The imagery in this deck is absolutely beautiful, and you can tell that she really did a lot of research into the cards, what they mean, and understands what they mean. So the art just really enhances and it gives it that really beautiful touch. Another deck would be the Golden Wheel Tarot. This one really encompasses a lot of Russian and Slavic fairy tale and folklore, and it's a really beautiful deck. It has a lot of really fluffy imagery, and it's very clear. It's pretty cartoony, but I do really like this deck. It has a lot of beautiful interpretations. The next deck is the Spiritsong Tarot. This one I do not recommend for beginners, simply for the fact that it is so different keyword wise, or name of the card wise, to a traditional tarot deck. The pentacles, for example, are crystals. The wands, I believe, are acorns. I could be wrong on that. There are just so many differences that I wouldn't suggest this for a beginner, but it is a beautiful, whimsical deck. If you like animals, then this is a deck for you. And lastly, I would suggest the Old Style Tarot. This has a lot of beautiful, historically accurate, like art influences that are really interesting and beautiful to work with. I really love and enjoy this tarot deck as well. And I will try to link all of these decks in the description. I don't know, I might run out of room in the description with all the resources and links that I'm going to be putting in there, but I will do my best. If you are interested in these, I do have an Amazon storefront. You can go ahead and look through all of the decks that I use in my personal practice and on my channel to do my tarot readings. So there you have it. We are all finished with class number 1. We dived into a lot, and I hope that you found this whole video and this whole class to be very insightful and encouraging to really further your education when it comes to tarot. And hopefully you feel a little bit more confident answering questions about what tarot is and where the cards come from. Our next class is going to begin the deep dive into the 22 major arcana, the trump cards. We are going to be starting with the Fool and ascending upwards through the major arcana. I'm very excited. We're going to look at the symbolism in the card. We're going to look at the history and progression of the meanings of the cards because some have changed significantly from when they were first developed. We're going to look at different art styles, and just different meanings, some colors, and all of the different symbolisms that you can really grab a hold of and digest when you're doing a reading. So yeah, I will see you all at the next class. I look forward to it so much. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. Blessed be.